Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. Today I am at the Academy and I've got a very interesting topic to discuss with you. Before we get into that, I just wanted to mention the awesome t-shirts that Sam has shipped out from the Electricians podcast. These are the ESK, Electrician Sparking Crew with a K t-shirts that he's been making in the background through the podcast for a number of months now. There's loads of iterations of it. This is the stealth version. On the back, there is some text that you probably can't see on camera, but I absolutely love it. We've got one of the full colour versions as well. I'm going to be wearing them down at Elex in Coventry, which is coming up next week. I don't know when this video is going to drop, but it's imminent or already happened, depending on when you're watching this. And so yeah, if you're there, come over and say hello. There should be a few people in these tops. There's a bit of curry going on, I think, around and about the meet up there as well. And yeah, just massive credit to Sam for coming up with this awesome design. I love the t-shirts that he puts out. There's some really good ones. And if you don't listen to the podcast already, you need to do that. It's usually on a Sunday night, live on YouTube, about 7:30, Electricians podcast with Sam and Jamie. And he often shares some exclusive t-shirts like these. Without further ado, we can dive into the topic. There's been lots of chat in the social media space of things around outdoor consumer units. I've got a video on the channel already that I'll link in the description, which gives my views on it. I've shown some working examples of ways that I approach it when it's unavoidable. There are some circumstances where it's going to be really difficult to do anything other than potentially use an outdoor consumer unit. When you're working with an existing submain, for example, in a building that the customer just wants a new board on and there's no shelter to it. There's an example of that at Matt Telford's on the job I shared on my channel. I think it's August 2023. So if you want to go off and look at that again, I'll try and link it in the description as my approach with it. However, we do seem to have this drive that's been pushed by energy retailers, and there's a big pushback from installers in the renewable space that's going on at the minute due to pricing pressures from energy retailers and some of these large national solar contractors who are really aggressively driving down pricing and using some aggressive sales tactics as well with consumers. And one of the tricks they have in their armory that they like to do quite often is utilize outdoor switchgear. So I just wanted to run through a little bit of that in this video, just to again emphasize my views on it, and we're going to have a little chat around some of the practices that these bigger solar companies do as well. So if you're a consumer watching this, there should be a bit of info in here for you. And also, if you're not aware, I'm also the co-host of the Renewables podcast. You'll see here we've got some little cups printed up, and that's with Sam Featherston from Oval Renewables. Recently had an episode out with Jordan from Artisan Electrics, and we had a chat around the industry side of things in terms of pricing and some of the stuff that's going on there, and shared some of our views. And there is a building community of people, especially in the social media space. There may be other activities going on away from that I'm not aware of, where we're trying to come together and present information for consumers to look at that's going to be helpful for them when they're forming a view in selecting somebody to install renewable technology in their home. However, let's dive straight back into the core topic, which is outdoor switchgear. Now, there is a factor to consider with all of that seems to be getting neglected, and it's something that I've gone on about for a fair while now, and that's to do with pollution degree ratings. And there is some content that's out there that has suggested recently closing the lid on a consumer unit would alter the state of that pollution degree rating for the equipment. So I just wanted to put something out there on my content that says that just simply is not true. It's misleading. You cannot do that to alter the pollution degree environment that a piece of equipment is sited within. And we'll get to why that's important as we move through this video. But I'm going to show you some overcurrent protective devices first, and they all have to be measured within the product standard 60947-1. That's the standard for overcurrent protected devices, for want of a better phrase. It covers loads of other things. If you want to go onto the BSI website, it costs hundreds of pounds to pay for and download, but there are some short snippets we're going to look at that other people of industry have shared as we draw through the course of this video and reference into. However, at the Academy, we are blessed to have lots of switchgear here, all purchased by me, and we can see what we've got. So this here is the main switch disconnector, and you'll see on there its BSEN rating, or product standard, is 60947-3, and that is because it is a switch disconnector. So it's a switch for all intents and purposes, for want of a better explanation. So that is the product standard for those. This bigger one here looks the same, so it looks very, very similar. You can see this is an MC200 TNA switch disconnector. This one is a molded case circuit breaker. So I'll try and spin the camera around, just bear with, and you can have a better look at that. Hopefully that's coming out on screen in the way that I hope it will. But we've got molded case circuit breaker, and this is a 63 amp variety. And you'll see on here it's BSEN 60947-2. Now that's important because that, among other things, relates to your pollution degree categories as well. Now up here we've got some what we might term as regular MCBs, and this is a 60898. It is 10 kA rated, so it's slightly above the kA rating you would find in a typical domestic system. However, its product standard is that 60898. And again, we'll reference back into that later on in the video. We've also got some bigger single pole MCCBs. So these are your 60947-2s again, just trying to get that on an angle that you can read. So we've got a 32 amp, a 16 and another 32. And again, these are able to be used in different pollution degree category areas because of that. Now it is possible with some manufacturers, and I think Proteus is one of them actually, where you can get dual product standard devices. So you would have something that looks like this, and it would be 60898 and 60947-2 rated, and its KA rating adjusts accordingly depending on which application of that product device that you are using. So that was just to show you some of them. We've also got some Schneider electric ones over here. So just thought I'd show you some of these. This one is an RCBO, so that's going to be 61009. This one up here, I don't know if they're marked on the outside of them actually. Spin that one off. No, so these will be written on the side, but that's a 6 kA rated variety, and this one is a 10 kA rated variety. And I'd have to check by opening that up and having a look on the side as to which product standard they might meet. It's probably easier to open up a website and have a little look at some of these, so we'll do that. I don't know if this other Schneider board has anything in it presently. No, it doesn't, so there's nothing in there. What else have we got over in this board? I think we've got some domestic grade breakers in this one. I can't remember if we put them in actually. No, they are all 10 kA rated, so they are still 60898. However, they are 10 kA rated, and that's just for your commercial environments where your fault current's typically higher. So that's a brief overview of what these things look like, and I realise there's a lot of trainees and apprentices following along in my content, so I just wanted to set that out. Sometimes these things can look similar but be different. So this is your switch disconnector. This is a large 3-phase MCCB, which is a moulded case circuit breaker, and this is a 3-pole variety, and you can see it's that product standard 60947-2. This is the same product standard, but these are just single phase options of that. And you can see one of the other things you get when you are going into the realms of 60947-2 is this adjustment in the tripping curves of them as well. And then these are what you might term, and I'm sure more of you in the trainee space will be aware of these more than you will these, normal MCBs, circuit breakers. So that's what we've got. Okay, so this is a slightly bigger MCB, and this is a 60898-1, same as the smaller ones up there, but you'll notice a bit wider. This is a C80. So you can still get these. You see it's got quite a big hole on the bottom, so you can have a reasonable sized cable going into it. But these exist as well, and just to show that you need to be referencing into the product standard applicable to it when you're siting it within an installation. If I take you over here, I can show you some of the other kind of switchgear we've got. So this is some of the older stuff that was kindly sent in by Ricky Byrne a long time ago now, so fair play to Ricky for doing that. And you can see we've got these on here. This is an old what we would term a Widowmaker board, so it's a Crabtree. And yeah, these inside here, I'm not going to take the lid off today, but they're quite bitey, so if you ever come across one of these, be very, very careful and ensure you've made your isolation pre-opening it. Got a Glasgow switch here, and you'll see this has got solid fuse links in, so if you ever come across this and you're unsure what's going on there, why is there no fuses, I don't like waving my hand in front of these things, but it's physically not connected to anything. I can actually touch it. It's just like built into your brain not to touch bits of copper even in open enclosures when you know they're isolated. But yeah, that's where you would use that as just basically a switch. The lever operates and it would turn the circuit on and off. And you can see this is an old MEM Glasgow and this is 80 kA rated, and it's from around the 60s, I think, this one, when we've had a look at it before. I'm sure there was a date on it somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it now. But yeah, I think I'm not lying when I say that. So these have seen the service of time, for sure. And we've got a residual operated circuit breaker here. So you can see this is a big old one. And this is a 415 volt, 50 hertz, 100 amp, 30 milliamp trip. So this is what you would have normally had as a main RCD on an older installation. You've got a 60 amp. These are similar to how we would term an RCD, but they behave in a slightly different way. So these are voltage operated earth leakage circuit breakers, and these are BS842. You typically find those off the main service head on an old TT installation, and a lot of them now no longer work, but they just kind of sit there as an isolation point because no one's ever gone to the trouble of removing them. And then with these, you've got your old fuse wire boards. So this is a Wilex variety, I think. Just get you in a little bit closer. So you've got your fuse wires. So these are your 3036s, and this one's got a 20, 30, and another 30. And you can see on there, this is your main switch. And the point to remember with these is when you are turning the power off with them, you should always do that before you start changing any fuses. So again, if you're a trainee, don't simply pull these out, because the terminals here can be live, and what happens is when DIYers change fuses, they're maybe not as accurate as we are, and those little threads in the bottom that you can see there could stick up, and you could stick your thumb or finger onto it and give yourself a nice belt. So always make sure you turn the isolation switch off if you come across one of these out in the wild and you're changing a fuse wire. Up here we've got a Schneider board, and you can see here these are 6K rated. These are 60898s as well, so these are your typical domestic grade breakers. It's the Easy 9 range from Schneider Electric. So that's another variation, and then there's a load of other overcurrent protected devices here as well, and these are mainly your main switches. So again, main switching 60947-3, and these are all, I'm pretty sure, 60898-1s, as you can see running along there. They all look to be. So yes, just as a few other examples. So we'll run off and fire the laptop up, and then we'll go through some of the stuff in terms of those standards, what they mean, and what some of the resources out there think of that. Stuff from Schneider, Napit, professional electrician articles. So we'll have a dig into all of that and chat through those in just a minute. So I'm back at the desk, and I thought we'd have a run through. It is transfer window closing day, so I just had that open, seeing if there was any big money deals going through. But yeah, we'll start off with this one. So this is from Schneider Electric, and this is basically, can an IEC 60898-1 be used instead of a 60947-2? So your 60898s are your basic MCBs that we've just looked at earlier in the video, and your 60947-2s are those MCCBs. And it's saying here, no, the consequences can be serious if residential circuit breakers are used instead of industrial ones. An MCB designed for indoor pollution degree 2 conditions would be inadequate for harsh outdoor applications that require pollution degree 3. Or take the tripping characteristics, IEC 60899-1, clearly describes B, C and D curves. So this is some of the other aspects that I mentioned where we were looking at the devices themselves. When you get those different tripping characteristics and the tolerances within, you can see it's talking about plus and minus 20%. At the bottom here it says typically IEC 60898-1 certified circuit breakers meet the required performance to prove proper protection of household installations, pollution degree 2, impulse voltage of 4 kilovolts, and isolation voltage is the same as nominal voltage 400 volts. Also, the requirements of this standard are adapted for non-technical users, which is why limited technical information is printed in detail on the circuit breakers. So that's telling us that your moulded circuit breakers might have a bit more in-depth information on them, and certainly in the literature that comes with them, whereas your normal circuit breakers, they understand that it's going to be everyday householders that are going to be operating these and using them. So there is a less bump, basically, and easier for them to understand and operate. So that's the Schneider blog. It goes into way more detail, and I've shared it on the video, which is linked in the description, where we go through this in a bit more detail as well, if anyone wants to go and have a look at that. But it shows you about where they get confused and some of the things that can be happen as a result of that, and more of the differences between those two product standards. And again, you can buy these product standards from BSI. They cost an absolute fortune, and they are pages and pages thick in way more detail than just this little niche topic that we're talking about today. So this is one that actually explains what the pollution degree environments are, and they're set out in 60947-1, which, as we said at the start of this video, is the kind of standard for your overcurrent protected devices. And it distinguishes 4 pollution degrees. So degree 1 is no pollution, or only dry non-conductive pollution occurs. Degree 2 is normally only non-conductive pollution occurs. Occasionally, however, a temporary conductivity caused by condensation may be expected. So that's if it's inside a dwelling. There might be times where, you know, it's a humid day, the house has had a few people having showers or whatever, and the air's quite humid, and some of that can end up working its way into the enclosures and switchgear for a very short duration, as what is probably a bad example, but that's kind of what that means. Degree 3 is conductive pollution occurs, or dry non-conductive pollution occurs, which becomes conductive due to condensation. So that's more like your unheated spaces, I would say, rather than directly outside. This is where there's kind of a slightly grey area for me as to what directly outdoors actually is. And degree 4 is the pollution generates persistent conductivity caused, for instance, by conductive dust or by rain or snow. So if you've got one of these on the outside of a dwelling, for example, at some stage in the course of a year in nearly every part of the UK, it will be exposed to extreme dust and snow. They could be at times when users need to go and interact and operate with them. So all of this nonsense around the doors being open and closed and all the rest of it to form a different type of pollution degree area is a joke, and that is something that is quite misleading and shouldn't be getting pushed out into industry as acceptable, because it isn't. So yeah, that kind of explains what those are. We'll come back to that at the end of the video. This is a really good article actually for professional electrician, and just to mention, actually, if you're on Instagram, professional electrician have had their account hacked or something, so they've lost it, no longer got access to it. So there's a new one building up, and I'll try and link in the description for this video what that is. For those of you who are following them, they've asked for people to stop following that account and start following this other one. The world of social media is nuts sometimes. But this is from Napit's Dan Holmes, and it's a look at the 2 different circuit breaker standards, provides clarification on the differences between them. So it kind of sets out what we've discussed at the kind of run through of this video, what the 2 different standards do. Circuit breakers to 60947-2 are frequently used in industrial applications, in utilities and manufacturing industries. Essential operating reliability. 2 requirements that assure reliability of circuit breakers are the ultimate braking capacity and the service braking capacity. Complying with both standards. So this is what we mentioned again. There are some products out there that do that. So circuit breakers to 60898-1 can also comply to 60947-2, but the short circuit braking capacity of each may be different. Some manufacturers state that their circuit breakers with a short circuit capacity of, say, 10 kA comply with 60898-1, and the same circuit breaker with a 15 kA rating complies with 60947-2. So one to watch out for. So they can look identical, so it's worth checking the numbers on the front. And again, as we scroll through there, it goes on to talk about replacing circuit breakers. So manufacturers warn against installing circuit breakers of one manufacturer as a replacement for circuit breakers of another. So it's covering that as well. And the conclusion is it's important to select the correct type and current rating of a circuit breaker for the environment, circuit and equipment. So there's loads of chat in and around there, and it mentions ACVs as well. So there's loads of different tools in the box in terms of overcurrent protected devices, and they all exist to cover off different requirements. So yeah, there we go on that one. So again, I'll link that in the description of that. We've then got an article from Mega which is talking about test instruments primarily and how they have to be rated to work on equipment in certain pollution degree environments, because it's not unreasonable on, for example, an outdoor consumer unit when you might have to be out there testing it and it could be raining. So they're considering it in terms of their equipment, but you see your pollution degree ratings just to say that they mention it as well. And again, I'll link that alongside this video. So I've been away again this week and just dropped back into the office for the afternoon before I am on another solar job next week, and some of the frustrations that are brewing out in industry, certainly around energy retailers and some of these large solar nationals, which I want to talk about at the end of this video, have been filling my inbox up, and also lots of questions around outdoor switchgear, because I've had a few views that I've shared over the last probably a couple of years now around all of that, and there's some other content that's come out over the course of the last week from a certain manufacturer. I don't like naming people, so I'm not going to do that. That it is actually okay. And I just wanted to re-emphasize again that ultimately the manufacturers and any expert on the internet, be that me or anyone else, is not going to be able to stand there alongside you if you've installed a piece of equipment in a place it is outside its intended use. Whatever they've told you, you're the designer of that system. So it's your name on the certificate. It's your name that's going to be held responsible for going against that. So the point I'm trying to make is if you've got an outdoor consumer unit and it has got 60898 MCBs within it, they're not designed to be used in that location. And if you're doing that, it's a deviation from its intended application, and you would have to put that in the deviations box on your electrical installation certificate for me. And this is where standards shift. So we have what we might term the electrician's Bible as BS 7671, and that's the thing that everybody jumps up and down around sometimes. But as part of our doing our job, there are way more standards that apply to us in and around that, and we need awareness of them and their applications of them, because that's our responsibility as designers and installers. And I just encourage you to think about that. I know the easy win sometimes when you're competing against these energy retailers is just to compete with them at their own game and start considering these as acceptable. But that is big corporations stretching the intent of installation methods to suit what they are doing, of rinse and repeat, loads of installs every day, just get through the volume, because they're just interested in selling energy to put into people's vehicles rather than the ongoing safety and suitability of that stuff, is what I would say. Because the thing around all of this is, we worry about the worst case scenario and something going catastrophically wrong and someone getting hurt. And I've mentioned all the issues before of metal switchgear outside when there's a pen fault, certainly with an electric vehicle. One of the primary actions of a consumer is to go and reset it at the circuit breakers, so turn it off and on again at the exact time that there could be a pen fault, because that's the regions the EVSE has shut down. Or it could be that a kid bangs his bike into it and it's running off a 100 amp service fuse that doesn't disconnect fast enough before they have a horrible electric shock. There is examples of when those things go wrong in the news and such, not related to outdoor switchgear, but the same principle applies. We've got to be very careful in our selection and erection to try and edge against those things from happening, I would say. But it's more the longevity of the stuff. So it's far more likely that this equipment's going to fail and you're going to be called back to it. So I think sometimes we look at this through catastrophic eyes when the reality is that's probably unlikely to happen. I'm not saying it couldn't, but it's unlikely. It's more the fact that this equipment isn't designed to have those temperature cycles of the extreme heat in summer, the extreme cold in winter, the dust, the humidity, the fauna, the fauna, the snow, the potential fact that somebody could go and flick a breaker on when it's raining and that moisture works its way into the components and it might fail after 3 years and the manufacturer's warranty is long since expired and it's you the customers call in because they think it should have lasted longer than that, and you've got to jump in your van, you've got to go and get a replacement, you've got to go and sort it out, when it would have been so much simpler to just install it on some switchgear that lives indoors exactly where it should be. I can't think of a domestic dwelling where I wouldn't be able to get a final circuit back to a consumer unit. I've been doing it my whole working life. It's just a nice, easy excuse. And we're missing a trick as well. I've showed you some of the fuse wire boards here. We're going around installing these outdoor consumer units when it's a perfect time to have a conversation with a customer that actually that fuse wire board you've got inside is a little bit out of date now. Technologies have moved along. Maybe it's worth having your installation tested. Maybe it's worth considering a consumer unit upgrade. It's not trying to oversell things to people. It's making them aware of the safety benefits to them and their equipment as well. We've got SPDs that we could potentially put in there alongside those consumer units in the indoor location, which if they're beyond 10 metres away from the EV board, it's going to make no difference if that's got an SPD in it or not. So there's lots of different interesting caveats to it when you really drill down into that. And I think if we're not careful, we're fast eroding the skills and competencies that make electricians, and we will just be replaced by energy retailers to picking up all the work. It's as simple as that. We've got to set out why it's important to utilise the services of an electrician, do proper design, do proper installation, consider all of these things, and it might be really nice for manufacturers to shift lots of switchgear because every EV charge point suddenly needs one rather than a breaker. It's obviously in their interest, isn't it? But it's not in the consumer's interest. It's not in the electrician's interest. And I think we properly need to get industry, the industry of things, to knuckle that down and stop dismissing the whole discussion around pollution degree rating. If you want to use an outdoor consumer unit, the devices within it should be at least 60947-2 for me, and they're considerably more expensive than your 60898-1s. And then you have the whole operation of them, which might involve the services of a skilled person rather than an everyday consumer, and the size of the enclosures to house them and such as well. Not mentioning the pen fault side of things and the metal side. Obviously plastic options exist, but again, people knocking bins and bikes into them. We're just going round in circles on this, aren't we? I can't believe I'm sat here having this conversation. In 25, 30 years now, well, it's not 30 years, I'm not quite that old, but over 25 years of doing this job, it's never something up until maybe 2 years ago I would ever think we'd be talking about. I just don't see why this has become such a thing, and my encouragement to any of the younger people in industry is don't just take what you see as gospel on the internet as it been okay, and think about it. Speak to some of the older installers out there who've been doing this a while and ask them to explain why it's maybe not a good idea and some of the other options that might be available to you. Now, coming back to the solar side of things, and again it ties in with these energy retailers to a degree, there is a lot of aggressive selling. I've had an experience myself as an elderly couple in the town I live where they've had door-to-door salesmen come past telling them that their solar panels are dangerous, their inverter might be about to spontaneously combust. I think I did a video about it as well, actually, I can't remember. And yeah, just the mis-selling there. So they're trying to tell people that the panels are incompatible with modern day inverters, so they need them replacing as well, that their inverters are going to set on fire. There's the whole issue there of people with their feed-in tariff payments that they're putting at risk because these companies don't follow the proper process for changing the equipment either. So that's something that's going on. And also we had a customer contact us who'd had an experience of an aggressive, large national solar PV specialist company go into their home and kind of almost forcibly selling a system to them. I think they handed over a £2,000 deposit while they were there, and they had great difficulty in getting that back. Lots of rather aggressive chat, both in person, where they came round to the house, and also on the phone. Just countless examples of this. I've mentioned the First for Solar jobs that we picked up when they went pop around the time that we started, I suppose. So we had a fair few inquiries from people in those circumstances. So there's that going on. And then there's all these tools where you can go off onto your energy supplier's website and they'll give you prices and all the rest of it, tie you into energy tariffs and all the rest of that. And I've done a little short video that I might tag into the end of this one just as a bit of fun for you to watch. And as I say, there's the Renewables podcast, if you want to go and check that out, where we're going to talk about that more and more. And there is a real community now of installers coming together on that subject. And I think the value there from people who are signing their names on certificates day after day, week after week, when they're telling you these things, is maybe worth listening to, in opposition to some of the marketing that goes on out in industry, because those are people who are just advertising. They're not really actively in the game, signing those documents, dealing with the fallout from customers. And sometimes you can get a bit carried away in that space. And I think that's certainly been one of the things that's happened with outdoor switchgear. And it's just one of those. Again, these are just my views. I'm never afraid of sharing my views. I ask for feedback on all the content for any of you who watch this regularly. If we've made a mistake and you've got a comment that can help us correct that, I love that. Same on the social media posts. I will always, oppose somebody who has come into me with something that they think I've done wrong. I will share my reason as to why I think I haven't. And I will do that forcefully, because I think that's the way to have adult debates. Too often, these things happen where other sides of the argument get to the point of view that it becomes kind of entrenched in battle and they become the enemy. And at that stage, you've just lost all element of debate. All the learning opportunities gone for all sides of that coin. And it just becomes this silly argument on the internet. And that serves no purpose and no better interest for anyone else. And I've seen examples of that with certain people online, and I want no part of that. So yeah, these views are shared with the utmost respect and honesty and integrity to all parties in these discussions, even the energy retailers. So yeah, if you want to come on the podcast as an energy retailer and have these chats, you are more than welcome. Otherwise, I hope this video has been of some interest, and I will tag the other one that sets it out a bit more clearly. And I have got a video coming where I screw an outdoor consumer unit to the wall and then run through some scenarios of using it and operating it alongside an electric vehicle charge point. And I think that one ends that whole thing for good once I've got it edited and out. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.